Hey guys, Sid from Sid's Trains here, and welcome to episode 2 of my Lionel Legendary Hudson series. Here in episode 2, we are going to be reviewing and running the Lionel New York Central Commodore Vanderbilt. Episode 1 was on the J1E style Hudson. I thought I would do episode 2 on another J1E Hudson. What you see in front of you is the New York Central Commodore Vanderbilt. This is a New York Central Hudson, but what many people don't know is that this is actually the New York Central J1E number 5344. So let me talk about that for a minute. The New York Central's Commodore Vanderbilt was the first ever streamlined steam engine. The Hudsons were great in quality, power, pretty much everything, except the new Zephyr-style streamliners were more fashionable. They were very cool looking, they had this great design to them, and people were drawn to them. So the New York Central decided to streamline locomotive number 5344, the last J1E, which 5344 was the Hudson that Lionel based their 700E after. So the number 5344 J1E was fitted with an Art Deco style streamlined shroud designed by Carl F. Cantola and was named Commodore Vanderbilt after the New York Central's pioneer. The streamlining was later replaced to match the last 10 J3A locomotives that were streamlined by Henry Dreyfuss. Before we talk about anything to do with the Commodore Vanderbilt that you see in front of you, let me just point out the obvious that everyone is probably going to say in the comments is the paint job on this engine. When this engine was streamlined by Cantola, it was then painted in a dark metallic gray color. It was a very dark gray color, almost a black, but it was still kind of a gray. Lionel got the wrong paint color on this engine. They asked DuPont, the original painter of the Commodore Vanderbilt, for a paint chip of the paint code for this engine, and what most people believe is Lionel got the paint color for the cab of the locomotive. The cab was likely painted a silver. So that is why the engine in front of you is painted a silver color. The engine should look like the engine that you're seeing right now. Now, Lionel did produce a black or kind of darker gray Commodore Vanderbilt a few years after this model was made, but it was in limited numbers and there's not very many of them out there. So most of the models out there are this color, this silver color, which personally I think the model still looks great. It actually kind of stands out. If you have some black passenger cars behind it, it stands out from the cars and really pops a lot. So I personally like the paint job, but I just wanted to get that out of the way as I knew people were going to comment that it's the wrong color, it's the wrong color. Yes, it is the wrong color to be prototypical, but it's still a very nice model. So starting out with some features on this engine has a AC Pulmer motor in it, it has TMCC and rail sounds, it has puffing smoke, magnet traction, a detailed cab interior, a operating firebox glow, and then it also had a choice of a pilot truck. And what you see on the engine is a 3-rail pilot truck, meaning that it is not completely scale. It is designed for you to run the train, but packaged separately with the engine is this. This is a scale pilot truck. This is meant for display, but it can also be used when running your train, and I will be installing that in this video. Another feature that this engine had is the choice of a remote coupler or a traditional magnetic knuckle coupler. packaged separately as a knuckle coupler, and I will also be installing that in the video. Starting out at the front of the engine here, we have a step on each side of the pilot, and the pilot has this kind of safety tread detailing on it, which looks very nice. Moving up, we have a separately applied handrail. Above that, we have a New York Central Lines plaque, which is this nice red color, and the letters are 3D. They are not just a sticker, they are this printed, molded detail, which looks very nice. Running down each side of the engine, we have handrails, which are also your TMCC antennas. Moving up from that, we have a plate kind of detail where the front of the engine could have come off in real life, and there is some nice rivet detailing around that. We also have the headlight, which there is an operating bulb on the inside. And then moving up from that, up here we have this nice vent detail. It kind of creates this cool streamlined flow look. I don't know how to describe it. It's just kind of a neat touch to the front of the engine. And this is a separately applied piece. This is not part of the mold. Now, before I talk any more about the detailing of this engine, I do want to note that this is a streamlined engine. So streamlined engines did not have a lot of piping or anything on the outside. So this engine does not have a ton of detailing, but for what it has, it's pretty nice. So continuing down the side, we have lots of rivet detail all along the plating here. We have this nice kind of plate look. This engine had a bathtub kind of style design. It wasn't just one big piece, it was multiple sections that were put on to this frame on the engine. And Lionel has replicated that with seams in the shell, which looks very nice. And if you can tell, there's this more light silver accent line all along the outside of the shell, which looks very nice. And there's also this crisp printed Commodore Vanderbilt name on the side. Above that, we have a nice separately applied pipe here, which that is pretty much the only separately applied pipe on the engine, but it, of course, still looks very nice. We can see the continuation of our handrails here, and overall, there's just a lot of nice rivet detail on this engine. At the back of the cab here, we can see more of that great rivet detailing, and you can see more of that accent striping right here. We see this light silver stripe here, and that is one of the most obvious stripes on the engine. Taking a look at the drive gear, we have these nice set of skull and disc drivers, which the Commodore Vanderbilt had two different style of drivers. It had the spoked drivers, more similar to the original 5344, and then it had the skull and disc drivers, which personally I like the skull and disc drivers more. Now if I shine a light here, you can get just a better look at everything. A lot of great detailing on the drive rods, which all looks very nice. And the skull and disc drivers have a nice silver stripe on them, or a silver rim. Taking a look at the back of the cab here, we have two separately applied handrails. We have a window on each side of the cab. In the middle here we see the engine side of the tether. Down here is this logo. It's an L with a lion on it, and that was the Lionel Legends logo. After this engine was made, I noticed Lionel boxes started saying American Legend on them, or Lionel Legend on them. And the this box that this engine came in says Legend on it. So I believe that is the Lionel Legend logo. So looking at the cab as well, we see all the great backhead detail. And in the center there is the firebox, and as you increase speed, the firebox glows more and more. And it also is hard to see, but at the top here, there's a screw, and then you see in the middle is a switch. And that is the run program switch for this engine. Then down at the bottom here, we have the engine side of the drawbar. Taking a look at the top of the engine, at the front we have the smokestack, and there is a puffing smoke unit on the inside. And to load smoke float into the smoke unit, you pour it down the stack. Moving back from that, we have this swinging bell here. There is some great kind of hatch detail here. There's a steam dome here. Right here is the whistle. Sadly, the whistle is just molded in, but on this engine it probably would have been hard to put a separately applied whistle down into there, because in 1996 Lionel wasn't really into scale locomotive making, so this was kind of one of their second attempts at a different model than their normal 700E Hudson. Behind that we have some safety valve detail. Then there's some more rivet detail that looks like some hatches here. And then we have these 3 vents on the top of the cab, but sadly they are just molded in. They do not move. Then there's also down inside these walkways, there's some great rivet detail and kind of structural detail, as this streamlined shrouding had to be held on to the engine. So there's some metal kind of structure braces down in there. So I have the engine flipped over here because I'm going to be installing the scale pilot truck on this engine. So we're going to start out here by taking this big screw at the back off. We'll then proceed to take off this little C-clip here that holds on the pin for the truck. And from there, the truck just pops off. And now we will just install the scale pilot truck the same way we took the other one off. We just drop this on, reinstall the C-clip, and then we will reinstall the big screw at the back. And there we go. So now let me flip the engine over and give you a better look of the difference between before and after. Here's a before, and here's an after. It definitely looks better with the scale pilot truck, as the scale pilot truck is larger and it fills in the space at the front of the engine. I definitely like it more, and I think I'm going to leave it on for now. So with the engine out of the way, let's move on to the tender. On the side of the tender here, we have a lot of great rivet detailing. We have a crisp stamped New York Central lettering on the side. Then there is more of that accent lighter silver striping going down the side of the tender. At the front of the tender here, we have the other end of the tether. We also have the other end of the drawbar. We have 2 steps on the side of the tender. We also have separately applied handrails. We have a little bit of coal spilling out of these doors here, and these doors are molded in, but they have a lot of nice rivet and latch detail on them. At the back of the tender here, starting at the bottom, we have 2 steps. Here is the magnetic knuckle coupler that I will be changing to an electrocoupler. Moving up, we have a coupler bar which is moving. We have separately applied handrails and a ladder here. We also have a backup light here. And then up here we also have a plastic ladder down in this little groove here. On the top of the tender here, we have this big hatch right here, and this is removable. If I can get there we go. This is a removable hatch, and it has these little pins that go into these holes here. And then inside we have the volume knob for the sounds. We have the rail sound signal sound switch, and we have the 9-volt battery connection. So now I have the tender flipped over so we can put this electrocoupler on. So first we'll start out by removing the old coupler. So this one is luckily held on by a screw, not some kind of C-clip, which C-clips are fine, but they're kind of hard to take off sometimes. So luckily it's the screw, and we'll just take the screw off. And I just saw the little spring fall out, but luckily I think I can get it here. There we go. So with the coupler off, now let's take the tender shell off to get to the electronics on the inside. So here we can get a better look at the electronics on the inside of the tender. This is all the rail sound setup, but there is a couple wires in here. This one is for the backup light, and then there's another one for the electrocoupler. Here is the electrocoupler, and there are 2 wires on it. This one has this little kind of O-hook clip on it, and this connects to the ground terminal, or the ground on the tender. Then this wire here connects to the command control power that is being sent to the coupler when you press the rear coupler button. Then they also include a wire nut, which is a nice touch. It allows you to connect the wire without having to do any kind of solder work. So let me find the brown wire or the wire that I have to connect to. Usually it's a brown wire, and then I'll show you that. And here we go. I found this brown wire laying in here with a little bit of electrical tape on the end. And this is the wire that we connect the one end of this electrocoupler to. So let me start out by running these wires through the truck and up into the tender, and then I'll get back to you. So I've pulled the wires through here, and I just have the coupler hanging down here for now. I'll attach that in a minute, but first I'm going to connect this power wire with just the wire on the end to this brown wire here. So let me fish this wire underneath the rail sounds board so there's no wires really touching. So then you just bring them together. And then you take your wire nut, which was supplied with this whole electrocoupler, and just twist it on there, and and once it gets tight, you can just leave it, and that's it. Now we have the power connection all good, and next I'll move on to the ground connection. Same thing, let me fish the ground connection through the rail sound, or underneath the rail sounds board. And I'm going to be connecting it where I see the other ground connections, right here. So let me just take my screwdriver and disconnect that. So with that off, I'll drop the screw through this one, and we'll connect this one up to the ground. And there we go. This coupler is connected now, and now I'm going to flip or put the shell back together and then put the coupler on. So all that's left now is to attach the coupler back to the tender truck. So let me do that. There is some extra wire here, but I'm going to bundle that up after I get the coupler on. So always make sure to put the coupler on the right way. You don't want to have to come back and flip it over. So the side with this little groove always goes up towards the tender frame. So there we go, we got this coupler on here, and now I'm just going to bundle up all the wires, and then we're going to flip it back over. So with everything put back together, it looks really nice. This scale pilot truck fills in the space of the front of the engine really well, and the electrocoupler at the back of the engine is attached and looks great, and it is operating. So that's good, and it was a pretty easy install for both. Lionel made it pretty easy to do those, and pretty much anybody can do it. So if you're thinking about buying one of these engines and you're worried about that, it's not hard at all. So now let me just go over why I really like this engine. Usually it's the appearance of a train that draws me to it, and that's not really the case with this engine. Of course, it is a very good looking engine. It's a Hudson type steam locomotive, and that really looks good to me. And of course the streamlining just sets it off from any other train around, but that wasn't the biggest thing about this engine that I like. The whistle was one of the biggest things that this engine had that drew me to it. The whistle on this engine is a super, I guess, kind of deep but high-pitched whistle. It's a really good representation of a New York Central style whistle, at least in my opinion. And in 1996, it was definitely a good representation of a New York Central whistle, and it just fits this engine perfectly. And I saw videos on DVD and YouTube of this engine, and that always drew me to it, and that's why I wanted this engine for so long. I actually have two of these. This is my second one that I have, and that's because the one that I originally owned is this one. Let me pull it off the shelf here. So if I set it down here, this is my original one, and as you can tell, it has some issues with the paint on the side, and that's a story for another video. But yeah, this is the second one that I've ever owned, and I just love this engine. The whistle on it is just amazing, and we're going to be hearing that in a couple seconds. But that was the big thing for me, was the sound set on this engine. So now let's start it up and run it around for a little. Here's the whistle. That sounds really good. I don't know about you, but that's just an amazing sounding whistle, and I think it really fits this engine well. Here's the bell. Here's the blowdown. I don't know, that blowdown's kind of short, but it sounds really good. It just has this nice deep tone to it. Here's a steam release sound. Now let me hook up some cars and we'll run it around for a little. Behind it I have a set of 10 Lionel Pullmans, or heavyweight Pullmans. These cars were produced alongside this engine, and if you guys would like to see a video on those cars, just tell me in the comments section. I have a 10 car set, so it was kind of too much to put in this video, but if you'd like to see that, I can do a video on them. So just tell me in the comment section. Let's roll her out. So as you can see, this is an amazing engine. It's just so fantastic. I could not live with my other one with a paint issue, so that's why I had to get another one. These engines are just so great. The sound system on them is just amazing. That whistle is like so haunting, just seeing the engine run around, especially when the lights are off and you hear that whistle. It's just so amazing. It's definitely a different model from anything else out there. The only engine that kind of looks like it is the New York Central's Mercury, but even then, there's not really that big of a comparison there. So definitely a unique model, and something I would recommend to anyone out there in this hobby. So definitely try to pick one up if you're interested in it, of course. By no means do you ever have to buy a train just because I have a train or something, or just for any reason. Buy what you like, but I definitely recommend this. So this is a fantastic engine, and I definitely recommend it. So that's all I have for this episode of the Lionel Legendary Hudson series. As always, like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Comment below and tell others about the channel. I'm Sid, and I'll see you next time, guys.